Well, good afternoon and happy Christmas Eve day. Hope this finds everyone doing well and excited and anxious for celebrating Jesus' birth tomorrow. Today, I want to share with you a couple of verses out of Second Timothy, 2 Timothy 4, verses 16 through 18. And I'm going to do this in two parts so that the videos aren't too lengthy and you get bored with them or just run out of time to view the whole thing. So I'll be doing this in two parts. But these three verses are life verses. The principles, the truth behind these verses um, carry us through at times when we're going through difficult times. I'm not sure about you, but this last year has been pretty difficult for me and my family, and a lot of issues going on this last year. Seems as though that the more you commit your life to the Lord, the more you choose to serve Him and to minister to Him and to His people. It seems like, to me anyway, recently that the worse your circumstances get, and I'm sure that that isn't by coincidence. I am convinced that the devil hates me. But that's okay, because greater is he who is in me, the Lord, than he who is in the world. But anyway, I wanted to share these verses with you, and maybe you can relate. I just got back from the store, and the lady at the checkout counter, I wished her a Merry Christmas, and I asked her if she was all ready for it, and if she was going to be able to relax, or if she had to travel, or if she had a lot of plans, and sometimes we get so busy around the holidays that it's almost more work and becomes a disappointment, because we're so busy and we don't have time to enjoy it. But so I asked her that, and she says, well, I've been taking chemotherapy, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully resting and relaxing because my life has been upside down lately. And boy, I just my heart went out to her, and I didn't feel led to pray for her there in the store. There's other customers and stuff, but I told her that I'd be praying for her, and maybe you're in that place, where you just feel like life is just taken you by surprise and just has wrung you through the gutters and through the mud, and maybe you even feel abandoned and alone. These verses are critical because they speak to that. And they point out that we are never truly alone or truly abandoned in the Lord. And so I want to share these verses with you. First of all, we'll take a look at them in the Greek text. We will read them. We will read these verses. We will parse the words, and then we will translate the words. And then I want to share with you a couple of points. And so first of all, let's start off by reading verse 16 and the first part of verse 17. It says here in the Greek, ente prote mu apologia udes moi par ageneta, alla pantes me enkatelepan, me autois lagisthee. And verse 17 says, ha de kurios moi pareste kai anadunamosin me. Okay, so starting back up here in verse 16, we start off right away with a prepositional phrase. Ente prote mu apologia is a prepositional phrase. Our preposition is en, and I'm just going to abbreviate. The object of the preposition is apologia, and it's in the dative singular feminine. And then we have te prote, which is an adjective that modifies apologia. And it is, remember, adjectives have to agree with the noun that they're modifying in case, number, and gender. So it's also dative, singular, feminine. And then we have a personal pronoun, mu, which is genitive, singular. Okay, so there's our prepositional phrase, and we'll come back to that and translate that in a minute. Then we go on to the next part of this verse, oudes, moi parageneta. Oudes is nominative, singular, masculine. Moi is another personal pronoun, It is dative singular. Paragenita is our verb, and it is in the aorist middle indicative, third person, singular. And it is from the word paragenomai. And it means to come, to help. Okay, moving on through this verse, we come to alla pantes me and katelapan. Alla is a conjunction. Pantes is a genitive, plural nominative. Me is another personal pronoun that is accusative singular in its parsing. And katelapan is another verb, and it is aorist active indicative, third person, plural. And its lexical form is enkatelepo. Okay. The next phrase here, we have me, which is a negation. Autois is a third person personal pronoun that is in the dative, plural, masculine. We come to another verb that is aorist passive optative. This is a mood that isn't used a whole lot in the New Testament. Seems like I came across the number of usage. It was something like 65 or 68 times in the New Testament. So the optative isn't used a whole lot, but it is the mood of possibility. Whereas we have the subjunctive is kind of similar, but it's the mood of probability. So kind of similar. One is possibility. It's possible that this might happen. The other one is probable that it will happen. So anyway, a little bit of subtle nuance there. And this is also third person singular. Okay, and then verse 17, we pick up here ha de kurios. We have de, which is a post-positive, and it's a conjunction. Post-positive is a word that comes first when we're translating it into English, but in the Greek it may come second or third or even fourth. And then we have our subject ha kurios, which is nominative, singular, masculine, and then it's article ha. Then we have another personal pronoun moi, which is in the dative singular. Then we have two verbs, pareste and enadunamosin. Pareste is in the aorist active indicative. Third person singular. Our conjunction. Then our second verb here is in the aorist active indicative. This one here being third person singular as well. And then our final personal pronoun here, which is accusative singular. Okay, so there's our parsing. It's important to get our parsing down so that we know the grammatical function that is happening behind each word. And in Greek, that is really, really critical that we do that to be able to get a more accurate English translation. So let's go back and let's start here in the beginning with our prepositional phrase and begin our our translation. I'll use a different color here. En, English word for en, prote first, mu, my apologia, defense. So this prepositional phrase here, you know, in English we would read it as in my first defense. Greek doesn't necessarily follow any specific word order. English does, and so therefore we need to move that around to where it makes sense in English. The next part, oudes moi par agenita. We have no one. Oudes is no one to me came to help. Aorist, it is past time with undefined aspect. So here we have no one came to my help, we could say. No one to me came to help. The idea there, I think, is pretty clear. Our next section here, alla pantes me and katelepan. Our conjunction alla is but. All me abandoned. Abandoned. No. Okay. Or, yeah. So we have here, in my first defense, no one to me came to help, but all abandoned me. And then there's an interesting phrase here. I love this little phrase that Paul sticks in here in the middle of his witness to Timothy here. And we start off with a negation, which is the word for not. Autois, third person personal pronoun, to them. Logos theei, the aorist passive optative, it comes from the word logizomai, and it means, well, let me do it this way. It means to be counted or calculated. Okay, but with it being in the optative, we have to somehow convey back into English the mood of possibility. So we would add the word may or might if it was plural. Yeah, I think that's how that works, may or might, depending on whether it's singular or plural. So what Paul is saying here is that in his first defense, no one came to help, but all abandoned me. And then he says, may it not be counted to them. That this whole idea that they left him, they abandoned him in his hour of need, that he says, look, don't let it be counted against them. Don't let it be calculated to their lives that they left me when I needed them. Okay, and we'll come back to that idea here in a minute. Verse 17, we start out our post-positive de, our conjunction is but. The Lord, personal pronoun, to me, stood, or stood by me. BDAG offers both of those as definitions. Our conjunction kai is the word for and dunamosen is the word for strengthened. And me is our word for me. So he goes through all this, and he's telling Timothy, he says, in my first defense, we don't know necessarily what defense he is talking about. The mark of Paul's life was that he was arrested often, it seems, for preaching the gospel and proclaiming that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but through him, not through the works of the law. And so, the Jews got really upset about that, and so he was put on trial often. And so we don't know for sure which instance he is talking about here, but he's talking about a time when he was making his defense, that no one came to help him, but that everyone abandoned him, And he offers up this phrase, um, you know, don't let it be counted against them. But then he points out that but the Lord stood by me. That to me, the Lord stood. And not only did he just stand there, but he strengthened him. Um, so, a couple of points that I wanted to point out with this as I was reading through this, and this, as I mentioned, this is just kind of some life principle here. That if you're a Christian, you need to understand this clearly, because sometimes the battle is fierce, and sometimes the battle is lonely. Um, and Paul is pointing out here that everyone abandoned him. And I remember, I wonder if it came to Paul's mind when Jesus was arrested, the night of his arrest, how it says in Mark 14, verse 50, that it says that that when Jesus was arrested, it says that they all left him and they fled. I wonder if Paul was remembering, and thinking, they did this to the Lord too, and maybe that was a source of comfort for him. And I think that at times when we can feel abandoned and we can feel alone, that this is a source of comfort. That our Lord Jesus Christ suffered the exact same thing, and so he knows exactly how we feel, and he knows exactly what we're going through. Hebrews talks about that he is not a high priest who is far off and that can't relate to our weaknesses and to the struggles of this life, but that he is, I think it's Ecclesiastes says that there is a brother, or there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother, and that reminds me of the way that the Lord sticks close to us in our hour of need and in our most desperate times, and that he won't abandon us when everybody else does. The second thought, this phrase here, me autois logos theei, may it not be counted to them or against them. The same thing, similar thing, when Jesus was crucified in Luke 23, he was nailed to the cross, and they were dividing up his garments, and he offers these words to the Father, and he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And we see here the same principle that is at work in Paul's heart. He says, they left me, I needed their help, they abandoned me. Abandon is kind of a strong word, left is, they left. But abandon is a little bit stronger, has a little bit stronger sense behind it. And no doubt there was a lot of pain there for Paul. But he says here, don't let it be counted against him. Lord, forgive him, in a sense. And, that is a mark of a mature Christian who, even though they've been wronged, even though they have been abandoned, even though they needed help and no one helped them, even though they have every right to complain and to be justified in that complaint, but instead to take the high road and say, Lord, forgive them. Don't let their weakness be counted against them. We go through so many trials in this life where we are, we find ourselves walking alone, honestly. But this next verse points out that the Lord will stand by us no matter what. Even when everybody leaves us, even when everybody forsakes us, even when we need their help and they for whatever reason, they just don't, the Lord promises, pareste, to stand by us. And not only just to be an observer, just to silently watch, but he is actively participating in our lives by strengthening us and a dunamosin. And maybe that's for you this year. That maybe you've struggled this year, and you look back and you think, boy, I felt lonely this year and abandoned this year. I want to encourage you that, first of all, take heart, because there is a God in heaven who can relate to what you're going through. He knows exactly the struggle that you're facing, and He knows exactly what loneliness feels like. And not only that, but He wants to come alongside you, and He wants to strengthen you, and He wants to comfort you. Because, as Christmas reminds us every year, that God is not a God who is far off, but He is a God who is near, and His name is Emmanuel, God with us. So I hope this is a blessing to you. I hope it's an encouragement to you. May you have a Merry Christmas, and may the Lord be strong in your life.